So this is our Saturday evening gathering, and we began the puja with chanting the Buddha's words, the sutta on anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. And that's, although we chant it pretty regularly, it just is, it's always nice to remind ourselves of these foundations of the meditation, of the practice. And mindfulness of breathing is certainly can hardly get more in line with the theme of our winter retreat, back to basics. So, and just to remind ourselves of these fundamentals of the practice, and of course mindfulness of breathing, and that's in the beginning of that discourse, when it's practiced and developed, mindfulness of breathing, it fulfills the four foundations of mindfulness. And the Buddha gave, say, extensive or effusive praise for the four foundations of mindfulness. This is one. It's quite, I think, quite unique in a say religious spiritual teaching, to have these tools that are so readily available, readily accessible. Just that the mindfulness of the body, of feelings, of the mind, of objects of mind. It could hardly be more ordinary or on a certain level obvious, because it forms a foundation of all of our experience. But to spell it out and really develop it as a path to liberation, it's quite unique, really. And certainly of course, the Buddha teaches these four foundations of mindfulness in many ways, many places, and so this mindfulness of breathing is a way of accessing it quite directly as well. How much more ordinary and obvious could it be than breathing in and breathing out? But, we oftentimes overlook the obvious, and looking for something special, something fascinating, scintillating, and just forget to pay attention to what is obvious right in front of in this case, right in front of our noses. And it reminds me of an old teaching story, a Sufi teaching story of the Mullah Nasruddin, where Mullah Nasruddin is this kind of one of these mythic or fabled characters in different traditions, and in this particular Sufi tradition. And anyway, he's living in some border region, and he crosses the border, comes back, and he goes back and forth with his kind of caravan of donkeys, and he's got packs on these donkeys, and he's carrying goods, and because the border agents, the customs agents, they stop him and check him, and he seems to keep getting more wealthy and more well off as time passes. So the border guards get more and more suspicious, and they really check him really carefully. And all they find is just really ordinary trading goods that are all above board and all nothing incriminating at all. And time passes, and everybody gets older. And finally, Mullah Nasruddin retires and is out of business and living a very comfortable life. He's quite wealthy now. And one of the border guards happened to meet him, and they're chatting, and very friendly, very warm. And finally said, all these years you kept, going back and forth, and we kept checking you. We were sure you were smuggling something, and would you be willing to tell me what? Because you obviously made a pile of money somehow, and would you be willing to sort of share what you were smuggling? And Mullah Nasruddin smiles. He had donkeys. so, it was what was obvious, but it. So this is it's a fable, teaching story, but it's what we overlook the obvious, and look elsewhere for. So, but this is where these four foundations of mindfulness are this body, feeling, mind objects. This is the obvious basis of our experience and what constitutes a human life. And this is what we need to understand. This is what we need to penetrate. And doing it in a way that isn't, again, not overlooking the obvious. The Buddha is again very emphatic, where he said, "This is the direct path. This is the direct path for the attaining the overcoming of suffering, and the attaining the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, the disappearance of pain and grief, the attaining the true way for the realization of Nibbana." And that's pretty blunt. This, if we want to, it is a direct path, and then to be seeing, and the way that the Buddha describes it, of this being how do we develop these four foundations of mindfulness, and so it's just seeing the body as a body. There's different ways of translating it. Body as the body, body in the body in and of itself. You get the picture. Not complicating it with our interpretations or our projections or our hopes and fears, but just seeing body as body. And the same with feelings, same with the mind itself. The torturous ways that we look at our mind and our feelings and what our mind conjures up and takes as its object, we get tangled up. And just to be able to see, body is body, feeling is feeling. In and of itself, it's like this. Which is a great way of really applying Lupa Samhito's recurring teaching phrase. It's like this. Just pay attention. It's like this. Old bodies are like this. Young bodies are like this. Male bodies like this. Female's body like this. It's, all of the healthy bodies like this. An ill body is like this. It's like this. The body's a body. And to just not get that entanglement of identification, personalization, complication that we tend to overlay our experience with, and just to establish mindfulness on the body. And of course this is where the Buddha then also, what is the kind of aspect of mindfulness or degree of mindfulness or way of establishing mindfulness, and because mindfulness is certainly a buzzword in the literature of the day, and the Buddha said, ardent, fully aware, mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. And this is a refrain that comes up throughout the application, establishing of mindfulness, a sense of being ardent, and ardent in the Pali word is atapi, and it implies an effort. Ardent is a good word because it's sort of there's a certain ardency, there's an interest, there's an assiduousness, a willingness to put forth some effort. It's not frantic, it's not obsessed, it's just, there's a willingness to be diligent, and that is something that is absolutely essential when we're applying and developing our meditation, developing our mindfulness skills, developing the training of the whole body, speech, and mind. There needs to be an ardency, and so that ardent, fully aware, that is sampajanya, fully aware. Old translations, clear comprehension. Ajahn Jeff translates it as alert. You're getting the feeling of these words, that where that sense of alertness, fully aware, clearly comprehending, applying the mind to the, applying the mindfulness to the circumstances that one's in, applying the mindfulness. It's not sort of a kind of a nebulous drifting of some sort of global awareness, or one is applying, along with that effort, applying that interest, applying the discernment, so that one is fully aware and clearly comprehending the circumstances that one's in, the what's actually needed, what's useful, what's beneficial, reflecting on the results of the mindfulness that one is cultivating, and certainly that ardent, fully aware, mindful, that is sati, just on its own. The word sati, being mindful, and there's also sati is mindfulness in the sense that one is doing things, just not doing things half-hearted or with half a mind, applying the attention to what one is doing. Also, a way of say, sati is bringing to mind what one is doing. Because it also has the word itself in Pali has a hint of memory involved as well. Reminding oneself to bring attention to what one's doing. So there's just different descriptions of how to apply the mind more fully, more completely to what one's doing. So being ardent, fully aware, mindful. And then the last quality, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. And it's just that covetousness and grief are sort of catchwords for desire and aversion, or the reactivity of liking and disliking, wanting, not wanting, approving, not approving, of the seeking out or shrinking back from the world around one. So that all of the basis of proliferation and complication that we can add to things. And so that as we cultivate this mindfulness, these qualities of mindfulness, these ways of establishing mindfulness, there's the meditation and the way that we live, because it's not applied just to meditation, it's applied to all aspects of our body, speech, and mind. But of course there's, I would say, like in the discourse on the establishing, the Satipatthana Sutta, the discourse on the establishing of mindfulness, the very first way, that the basis for establishing of mindfulness is mindfulness of breathing, mindfulness of the breath. It's in the aspect of the body, and that actually just deals with the first four. We chanted this evening the Anapanasati Sutta, and that goes into 16 steps, 4 sets of 4 of the 4 foundations of mindfulness in 4 different kind of avenues of establishing attention and developing in the Satipatthana Sutta, then the Buddha just talks about the aspect of the body. And as we pay attention, of course, these aspects of practice and training, developing our understanding of Dhamma and using the tools that the Buddha has given us, we end up developing. It's not as if there's a hard and fast line between, say, establishing mindfulness on the body and then there being attention to feeling or the mind itself. So that they come together. It's a way of attending to experience. But when we practice, and then sometimes there's a bit of overlap, or a teaching that Ajahn Lee gave, and he was a Thai forest master, a disciple of Ajahn Mun, and also he was really the first disciple of Ajahn Mun who came to central Thailand and brought this sort of the path of practice and the teachings of Ajahn Mun to central Thailand, popularized it. But he was a very innovative teacher, and it's also he had very rich ways of describing the practice. But one of the things he talked about, and he really played with the teachings. So he said that, and I've never heard it described anywhere else like this, but that in those qualities of mindfulness, that sense of ardency, one applies that in everything. But when it's applied to mindfulness, when there's an ardency in applying mindfulness, then it's a source for joy to arise, piti. So that sense of there's an ardency, but then once you're using that sort of interest and assiduousness and the willingness to put forth effort to the mindfulness itself, there's a great sense of joy comes. And then he said, and that ardency, when it's, say, the quality of as applied to that sense of sampajanya, it's a great sense of pleasure. So and this is also because what's one is doing, that sense of ardency with mindfulness is also relying on vitaka, that lifting an object into the mind. And so that sense of ardency and then the application of that willingness to put forth effort, but again, there's a steadiness to that, but it's like lifting the objects into the mind, of vitaka, that directed thought. And then with the quality of sampajanya, of clear comprehension or fully aware, that ardency and being fully aware lends itself to evaluation, vichara. So vitaka, vichara, that tends to sort of roll on itself, tends to sort of stimulate that quality and the directed thought evaluation. Of course, these are fact of the deepening meditation, deepening stillness of the mind, deepening the steadiness of the mind. So vitaka, vichara, piti, sukha, and that sense of the kind of joy and happiness arising out of that vitaka, vichara, that ardent mindfulness, the ardent clear comprehension, ardent application of full awareness. And of course it requires having put away covetousness and grief for the world, a settling of the pulls or attractions or aversions to the world. And the world being eye, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind, whatever the inner, outer world is all one thing, what we call world. And of course that's equanimity. So that this is, it's that developing, so you see mindfulness and concentration are not separate things that we're, oh, I'll become mindful, then I'll develop my meditation. You're developing the meditation, developing samadhi as you go along. And this is, of course, this is what Ajahn Chah put a lot of emphasis on, the fact that, say, proper meditation is basically a continuity of mindfulness. Any meditation devoid of mindfulness and full awareness is not going to be right meditation. So that starting from that foundation of mindfulness and building the connection to the base of our experience of the body and feeling, mind, objects of mind. But particularly, you really want to pay attention to the body, just because it's so obvious. Don't overlook the obvious and looking for some sort of something hidden and refined. This direct path to realization is right here. So those are a few reflections for the evening. It's Saturday night after a one prat night, so I'll end the talk.